All right, what's going on, guys? Trev back again, here to bring you another video. This one's going to be doing my final issue review because this is now the final issue of the Walking Dead comic book series. My review for the end of The Walking Dead, issue 193, The Farmhouse. Alright, so it hit today. It's released today. If you guys haven't read it yet, you can try to get a copy at your local comic shop or maybe order one online. They do have imagecomics.com where you can get kind of a digital copy, or you can go to Google Comixology, some different options online where they have it right now. Google has it right now. I'm not sure release times and that kind of stuff for Comixology and some of the others. So this is it, guys. Finally, have been waiting to read this issue since we got the news basically yesterday or a couple days ago that this was going to be the final issue of The Walking Dead. It came as a surprise for basically everybody. It's a triple issue. It's over 70 pages long, and it's called The Farmhouse. Now, this one is very surprising in the way they did this because they actually showed covers for 194 and 195, and they were basically fake outs or, kind of false releases, and really this was like a triple, and instead of releasing it 3 separate issues, to just release it all at once as the final kind of issue, I guess, just to maybe get it over with or that type of thing. Actually, this is a really great release for The Walking Dead, and all in all, I think, and I'd love to see how you guys are feeling about this one. Please leave your comments below. It was a huge shock to find out that The Walking Dead is actually ending. I enjoyed probably the letter hacks the most out of this entire thing, or just an explanation of why The Walking Dead is ending at this point, which I'll make a video right after this, also posted today, on why The Walking Dead is ending now, based on what Robert Kirkman has in the letter hacks here, because he basically explains in the letter hacks why he decided to end The Walking Dead at this number and why it makes sense at this time. And after reading the issue through, I feel a lot better about it. I feel way better about it because it does make a lot of sense when you read kind of the ending. And we'll go through, spoiler warning, we'll go through the events here of what is included in this final kind of triple issue here for The Farmhouse. And it's basically the future in similar fashion to what we saw in the Walking Dead television series, where they have a big time skip where they go ahead many years, like 6 years or plus. 6 years in The Walking Dead Season 9. We get to see something like that in the Walking Dead comic book series. A huge time skip in the series after what happened in issue 192, Aftermath, where you have a younger Carl. We skip ahead many, many years into the future where you have a full-grown man version of Carl, and we basically get to find out the end of The Walking Dead and the end of the story. And I am very happy to report that he kind of gave us the ending that most of us wanted, and that he said in the letter hacks would be a rewarding ending for The Walking Dead, and that is to actually see kind of give it a reason for why we follow Rick and we follow Carl and we follow the group of survivors, and that is to sort of restart civilization. So this issue, as a final issue, really ends for me on a high note, because after Rick, of course, is killed in 191, 192, he basically becomes the reason why everybody gets together, and peace is found. And basically, over time, we are to fill in the blanks here that they were able to kind of master the zombie apocalypse and rebuild society. And, over the years between this huge time skip, I'm not sure how many years this would be exactly, but between 192 and 193, you have this huge time skip of Carl becoming a man, and a lot of kind of cool reveals here, which, again, spoilers, I don't really want to ruin this for anybody. You can read it online yourself if you want to see first yourself. But Carl getting married to Sophia and not Lydia, which I thought was really cool. Lydia is kind of like a very good friend of his, and so you have this love triangle still. Kind of focus here. Lydia still wears the cowboy hat, Rick's hat, which Carl gave her, which is kind of fun. But in the end, Carl ends up with Sophia and ends up, I guess, marrying Sophia and having a daughter with Sophia, who they have named Andrea, which I think is just great, for the comic book series to have that. So to get to see Carl in the future as a grown man, fully grown man, married, kind of have that happy, the farmhouse, a happy farmhouse, have a happy family with a home and everything. And the end of the issue is really touching as he basically reads her a bedtime story, which is pretty much the story of Rick and kind of their trials and the things that they went through. There's even a part where there's a huge statue of Rick, which is really great. And we get to see that through Carl's eyes. And basically you get to see the future. So this pretty much makes it so that, as he says in the letter hacks, and as it makes sense now, that this isn't a fake out ending. This is a genuine, legitimate ending for The Walking Dead, where you skip way ahead into the future. You find out that they have, who's survived in the end and who's still there for the most part, out of our A-listers and our important characters here. And you basically get to see that they won, and they won. They were able to defeat the zombie apocalypse. They were able to beat back the zombies to the point where the Walking Dead are actually, they became not the Walking Dead, as Rick had said in 191, and that they could be more than that. And the fact that he was kind of killed afterwards made it so the whole society kind of changed to where his ideals basically came into play, and they all got together after that happened with Rick and created the new world, the next world, which is the restart of civilization after the zombie apocalypse has been defeated, and even to the point here where we have a future Herschel, which is fun. Of course, Glenn and Maggie's son. He's nothing like Glenn, really. At least not really. He's kind of a spoiled brat with how Maggie's been treating him. Maggie's like the president, which is kind of cool, and you have Michonne, who's like a head, like a judge, which is cool, of like one of the high courts they have there, which is kind of sweet. And you just get to see everybody in the future. And Herschel didn't turn out too great. I mean, he's not like a villain, but in this softer kind of future where everything is kind of peaceful and happy and all that, he's traveling around as like a carnival kind of guy who's brought some walkers around with him to kind of show to people, because the Walking Dead are so rare in this future timeline. They've basically been totally wiped out to the point where they're not a threat at all. And they're so not a threat that people actually will pay for entertainment to see them in like a freak show, carnival type of idea as he goes around. So one of the walkers gets loose and stumbles upon Carl's farmhouse, and Carl aptly kills it and is making sure it didn't bite anybody or anything, and it's so rare to see one. It's just very strange. Then you get into this weird kind of different alternative future of like where Carl's in trouble because he destroyed one of Herschel's walkers, and they're so rare, they're very valuable. So he has to like go to court, and eventually he decides to kill the rest, and kind of being as disagreeable and rebellious as Carl is, and their law is that you're not supposed to destroy other people's property. Obviously, they're very expensive. So this is Herschel, so he's pissed off that this is happening because he's got like a business going to go around and show off The Walking Dead, which is funny. And then eventually it goes down to Michonne, who of course lets Carl off without any jail time or anything, and kind of decides like this is not right to be having The Walking Dead as entertainment, because they are very dangerous, and this could quickly turn into people dying. It's too dangerous to do. So Herschel kind of has to stop, or at least he's kind of cleared out for his inventory right now. So that's really cool stuff. There's a lot of dialogue in it. You could probably read through a couple times. I just read through once already, and I had a tough time reading it because I was just thinking like this is the end, and I'm reading like all this dialogue, and there's certain things I didn't care about, like there's Sheriff Kapoor, and I'm like, I don't care, you see. So for me, it's just like certain parts stuck out and certain other parts didn't. But it's kind of cool how Carl kind of goes out. He gets Lydia together. He goes to you see Lucille on a grave there, and at the end it says P.S. Negan lives, which is kind of cool in the end of the Walking Dead. So that's kind of sweet. And Maggie being the president, market value, and them being so high for zombies because they're so rare. But it kind of being like something that's, I suppose, would be like, drug dealing or something like this in regular society, that it's sort of like something that should be probably frowned upon. But, up until then, it's been kind of, I guess, allowed type of thing, but sort of like a black market type of thing. that some people are, really against, like Carl, because you just want to kill the walkers if you see them and how dangerous they are. But then you have all these other people who are not in the know, and they just think of them as like, that's so so funny to see, oh, they're scary, whatever. Like it's to the point where they have so dominated the walkers in the future that they're just like not even most of the people don't even take them as a sincere threat. They just kind of think of them as like some kind of carnival freak show type thing. So that's kind of funny. So let's see what else we got here. It is a long issue. There is a lot of dialogue. Because it's the very end, I don't feel like going through every line that's been said in it, but there's some really good ones. In a world ruled by the dead, we are forced to finally start living, which is a quote I think that was on one of like the first, if it was like the first trade or the first near the very beginning. That's kind of a Walking Dead quote that they've had on the back of the very first trade. Like I've got all the trades, right? The very first trade and that kind of thing. The first volume of the series, depending on how you collect it. There's compendiums as well, which he kind of says are important to him to have the compendiums, like the 4 compendiums and that kind of thing. So there are some good ones. The Rick statue got me. I really like to see the Rick statue. That was really cool of him kind of raising the stub or whatever, which was really sweet. And kind of having be the story of The Walking Dead about Rick too. Like with Rick having been killed off in issue 191, 192, and then the comics ending afterwards, it really makes the story about Rick. And then especially at the end, as he's reading it through to Andrea, as Carl's reading it through in kind of the rocking chair to Andrea as a bedtime story about her grandfather, about Carl's dad, of course, Rick. It's really cool. It's really a satisfying ending that makes it worthwhile to read The Walking Dead all the way through, and that this is a story about hope, and that in the end it's really about them having gone through this hell on Earth of kind of the dead, basically ruling the world, or in a world ruled by the dead, right? And them being able to find hope and sacrifice and do what's necessary, even Rick giving his own life in order to keep peace and in order to really defeat walkers, and having the Commonwealth be sort of and Maggie becoming president and all this stuff becoming kind of the future, without showing us every step of the way after 192, without showing us the rest. It makes a lot of sense to see that be a satisfying ending. You see Sebastian, who's still in jail, which I liked, and then you have Pamela, who's kind of like, it looks like she's in a wheelchair or something, maybe coming to visit him or check in on her son, that kind of thing, for what he did. But in the end, it becomes that Rick gave his life to preserve peace, and you even see Laura, who's still pissed off about it, right? All these years later, she's like mad at Carl because what happened and everything with Dwight and that. But it basically makes it so that Rick, the purpose of us following Rick for 192 issues, is that he is the one to restart civilization. It makes the story rewarding for the readers, and it makes it something where it has a point in the end. Like it's not just a survival horror story where eventually Rick dies and then they go on after that and Carl kind of leads and then he goes through. And it sounds like from the letter hacks that Kirkman had kind of weighed that option. Like he had thought about doing more and filling out more issues and doing this other stuff, but ultimately it sounds like when he had that idea, that it kind of pulled him towards that as being like, okay, that's a satisfying ending to all these issues, and having read it through all these years for so long, to where we follow the group and we follow Rick because they basically win. And it's a zombie apocalypse story where the movie doesn't end and then you have to watch the sequel, or it doesn't end with everybody dying. Like a lot of the dead movies and that kind of stuff, they will end and you get the idea that basically everybody's dead, or maybe they'll be on a deserted island somewhere and we're to fill in the blanks that they somehow survived. In this case with The Walking Dead, it actually becomes with the ending that they did in fact beat the dead, and they didn't. And in the end, they weren't The Walking Dead themselves. The Walking Dead were the walkers, and they were able to actually best them in the end and promote peace and rebuild. And that's kind of where we see them at now, where it's not, zombies are not even really in that future. Zombies are not even really a thing anymore. They're kind of like circus freaks, clowns type of thing that nobody will even take seriously as a legitimate threat now. So it was a really touching end, seeing Carl read things through in the book to Andrea, and also the letter hacks as well afterwards. Really great stuff. I am sad to see it end, and I am kind of upset that it didn't end and we didn't get to see some more kind of after post Rick's death with Carl, and getting to see more of his development, like getting to see he was with Lydia before, and eventually he ended up with Sophia. So maybe he saw Lydia as more like kind of the crazy girl that he was with for a while, for kind of a fun thing. But ultimately he ends up marrying the maybe a more suitable wife who's more kind of centered, kind of everything like that. And kind of the end is he's rocking in the chair with Andrea, and kind of smiling and just having fun, and she wants him to read it again, right? Read it again. That's very cool, right? So he did all of those things. My Father, Your Grandfather, Rick Grimes. This book is about him. So in the end, he made The Walking Dead about Rick, whereas the different version, the TV series version, which I hate to even bring up because this is really about the comics, but in that case, it's going to be a different story. It's going to be about the survivors, and it's going to go on past Rick, and Rick will go in the movies, and this kind of thing will happen. The Walking Dead comics in this way have really been made about Rick. So it's not, so the story in the end ends up being kind of Rick's story. So The Walking Dead doesn't, so he does die just before the end. The book really doesn't go on further after him. It really is about him, and in the end it's about Carl, his family, and Andrea, and the things that happen after that. And it makes it central to it that Rick is The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead is really about his story, and that in the end it's worthwhile to read it through, and rewarding. And she wants him to read it again because it's a story of triumph and a story of hope, and it's not a story of just survival horror to where everybody eventually dies, even Carl dies, and that kind of thing, and that's just kind of the way it goes. So I am very satisfied with the way, just looking at the statue here, very satisfied with the way that The Walking Dead has wrapped up and ended. It did kind of come out of nowhere, but it also feels suitable to me to read The Farmhouse and to read this as the last issue of The Walking Dead. I think it ended off basically perfect. I mean, it's basically a perfect ending to what you want. I think a lot of us as fans would have liked to see more of kind of the events that happened in between the time skip and that time, like to see how Carl ended up with Sophia instead of Lydia, to see how maybe other things with Negan may have happened or what else would have been. But if it was all kind of like peace and there was no, and there was really no villainous type of threats that were brought in, and everything was just fine, and basically after Rick was gone, everybody decided, okay, forget this, we're all going to band together and do what's right and create a good future in Rick's name, and he's seen as a hero in this way. It's a really satisfying ending to the series, and one that anybody who said that The Walking Dead is Rick's story, for the comic version for sure, I can definitely see that they would be very satisfied with this, because it sort of stayed central to Rick. It became his point of view, and he became kind of the hero of the story, even though eventually in the end he did die before it was over, but he was the hero of the story. So for that, I mean, I don't think it really could have been any better. I mean, I understand now why he decided to end it at this point. He probably could have kept it going on longer, but I guess he just decided, and we'll get into this more in the why video, but maybe he just decided, like, okay, this is basically a perfect ending for what I want to do, and we'll see how long it takes to get there, and this just ended up being kind of where it made sense to kind of get there in the end. So I'm going to give it a perfect 10 out of 10. I think it's the perfect ending for The Walking Dead. It's a happy ending, which is great. It's going to leave everybody basically, well, maybe not everybody, because there's always people that are not, but a lot of people satisfied with it. I think a lot of us are angry that it's over because we enjoyed the series so much, but at the same time, when you read it through and you get to see that they won, basically, it's over, like they won. That's it. There's what else is there to do? If you're going to go with that ending, then that's a good ending. Because, and I also think that the time skip served it really well. I just personally, the only thing I'm disappointed on is that I would have liked to have seen, some of the events through of how these things happened. And it could have been cool if it could have been done in that format where you got to see, how Carl ends up with Sophia instead of Lydia, and just what happened and how the whole thing went down, and what happened with Negan in between, Herschel and how he developed that way, Maggie and how she. But a lot of it, when you think about it, you can understand his perspective too, is that it's not all that exciting, right? Because the walkers are no longer a threat. It's what it is. The Commonwealth is so big and so, massive and so awesome that, walkers really are not a deal. Even you get to see Eugene in this one, too. He's, built the trains up and this kind of thing. So they have, this whole, again, it's just society has as rebuild. It's sort of like Western, but it's substantial for sure. So very happy with The Walking Dead issue 193. It was very unexpected. I'm not that mad anymore when I read it. I would have liked to have seen more in between, but at least I'm happy compared to some other series that shall not be named, that may or may not be named in the letter hacks, decided that they wanted to end in a totally different way. I was happy with the way The Walking Dead ended in getting like a good ending like that to where it made the whole thing worthwhile. And, you know, as Andrew says, read it again, right? Read it again. It's like, yeah, you can read it again. It's got great replay value because in the end, Rick was the hero of the story. He was the Batman or the Superman of the dead. And it also makes Rick the greatest character, and Carl too, you know, the greatest zombie apocalypse characters ever created, I want to say. I mean, there's like, if you look at Rick and Carl, they're so far, there's no other characters like that in any zombie apocalypse movie or series or anything that can hold a candle to them, and it's a great ending for what we would have wanted. It's a Walking Dead worthy ending, and I'm happy to read it in this way. I just would have wanted to see more because I enjoyed the series so much. It's like, give me more, you know. But you can't do that because it just, I guess he felt like it wasn't the mark of quality. It wasn't quite what he wanted, and this idea was too much of a pull towards that to kind of delay it much longer. He felt like, okay, let's just do that now. That now it makes sense. So we got to do it here. Anyway, we'll get more into the why video soon. I'm giving the final issue of The Walking Dead a perfect 10 out of 10. It's the ending that I always wanted. I've even said many years ago that like the reason why we follow Rick, there has to be a reason why. And you know, luckily in the end here, you know, it ended up that there was a reason why, and it's because the group, you know, the survivors led by Rick and losing Rick eventually were the ones who ended up beating not being the Walking Dead, beating the dead and rebuilding civilization again and winning. And that's awesome. How can you not get behind that? So leave your comments below. Let me know what you guys thought about the final issue. Are you the same as me, or are you totally on the flip opposite saying, no, Trev, this sucked? I mean, I would have wanted to see Carl become a villain and all this stuff. And, you know, he's still got a little bit of that in him. Like, he's still a little bit rebellious and that kind of stuff. But, you know, I'm satisfied with the way it went. It could have gone that way too. But then you run the risk of going into that territory where it just becomes, where it wrecks the story and it just becomes a story of like survival all the time and forever, and then everybody eventually dies and there's no point. At least it gave it a point to the whole series, and you want to, like Andrew says, you know, read it again, Daddy, right? So it's good stuff. Anyway, that's it for the review, guys. Let me know how you felt, how you're feeling, how you're doing. Leave a comment below, and we'll be back soon to discuss the why and you know, how, you know, also how we're feeling about it with regards to why the series had to end here, and go through the letter hacks. We'll read it through together. So for this video, guys, we'll see you again soon. For that one, as always, is Trev, and I'm saying peace. Later, guys. See you soon.